What do you get when you cross a mastodon, a pterodactyl, a triceratops, a saber-toothed tiger, and a tyrannosaurus? You get the topic of this week's episode. Today we're talking about the Power Rangers and how their more phenomenal rise to the top of the heap for kids all over the world starting in the mid-90s has kept the franchise still going strong to this day, almost 30 years later. Go, go Power Rangers on Generation S.
What is it?
It's time to go back.
Welcome.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Generation S. It's a podcast about growing up in the 90s and early 2000s. It's about shared experiences. It's about things that you may have forgotten you experienced from your childhood, which, again, if you're listening to this, hopefully was around the time that we grew up, which, again, the 90s, the early 2000s, and a lot of stuff happened during that time period, including a big part of our childhood with what we're talking about today. I'm here with my co-host, Lou Carnavale.
This is something I've been waiting for. This is my Ninja Turtles episode.
Yes, so the last episode we talked about Ninja Turtles, and it was a perfect segue into this, which for you, Lou, was kind of the next stage in your childhood evolution as far as the toys that you play with and whatnot. So you want to go ahead and just tell everyone what we're talking about today?
We are talking about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Just rolls right off the tongue like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Seriously, you think about that. A lot of these childhood properties had these long titles and names, and we knew them. As a parent now, I hear about the stuff that my son talks about. I'm like, what is that? I don't even know it. So I feel old. But I'm sure our parents felt the same way when they had to remember what it was called, as far as Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's a bunch of them out there. So, but yeah, man, no, Power Rangers. And what's cool is, again, like Turtles, Power Rangers never really left. It's still with us, right? It never left at all. Like Turtles, what we discussed in the previous episode, there were different incarnations of Turtles. They did their show in the 80s and 90s, then it stopped for a little bit. And by saying it stopped, it legitimately stopped for a couple years, just a few years. And then another incarnation came out, then it stopped for a couple years, so on and so forth. Power Rangers hasn't stopped ever, and they're going on the 30th season. 30th it's like Doctor Who, or just like a soap opera. You're right, it's a continuous story that has just evolved. Now I think each season is a different group of people, but technically it all ties together, right? There were seasons, and we'll go into it a little bit, when Disney bought it, that it was just, here's a season, and here's another season, and here's another season. But in the beginning, all one storyline, and now it's kind of a mix. They acknowledge there's older seasons and older Power Rangers, but still kind of focusing on the new kids that are on the show.
Okay. So we're going to, kind of like we did with Ghostbusters and the Turtles, we're going to talk about, we're going to break it down with the show. We're going to talk about the movies that came out. And for me, it was really only one movie that came out that I saw. We're going to talk about the video games, and we're going to finish it up with the toys. And then obviously talk about kind of the impact on us today. And you sort of alluded to that with yours, as far as it's something you still follow today. I unfortunately don't. But again, huge part of my childhood. So, let's kind of start with that. So for me, it was, I remember seeing previews for it on TV, and I have my notes here that my earliest memories were in second grade. Honestly, I probably did watch it earlier than that, a little bit in first grade, but second grade is when the kids in my class would watch it. We would go outside during recess, and we would play Power Rangers, and I was always the bad guy. I don't know why I was always the bad guy, but I think they always made me the bad guy. I didn't get to be a Power Ranger, and I'd go to birthday parties that were Power Ranger themed. I got Power Ranger toys for my birthday. I remember I had a friend in second grade. I think his dad was a dentist, so he was kind of rich, and so I don't know if you're a toy collector, so I don't know if you remember this, but it was a black and gold Megazord.
I do remember it because I didn't have it, and then they re-released it right as Toys R Us was going out of business.
Oh my God, it was the coolest thing. And so anyway, that was my first exposure to really cool Power Ranger toys. And again, I watched the show. It was on in the mornings where I grew up at 7 o'clock. So I'd watch it before I went to school. In my kitchen, we had this little tiny I mean, God, if it was 12 inches across a screen-sized TV on my counter. It was small enough to fit on my kitchen counter. It had the broken knob, but it had the knobs to change the channels. It was on Fox 23, and I watched it every morning before school, and I know it was on in the afternoons as well, especially, in the later years. It came on after school, and so I watched it then, and my first episode, if you're listening to this and you know Power Rangers, hopefully you'll remember this episode. If not, I apologize. We're talking about our exposure to Power Rangers, but there was an episode with a villain called the Pudgy Pig. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I thought it was amazing. I was like, this show is amazing. You got these guys in spandex that know martial arts. It's literally live action superheroes, because you didn't have a lot of live action superhero shows, at that point. You had some stuff, I think, in like the 60s and 70s, but this was like live action superhero TV for us. So it was really cool. And then, it obviously was popular for so many years, to the point where, by the second season, it was like heavily advertised on primetime TV. And I remember the season premiere of season 2. My parents let us stay up a little later because it was an hour-long special. You remember that? It was a 2-parter.
I do. It was the introduction of the villain called Lord Zed, and I do remember having a friend over and watching it in primetime, which, if you think about it...
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal back then. It's a big deal now. And with all the streaming services that we have now, TV and the ratings have kind of dwindled down. So it's an even bigger deal back then.
Yeah, no, it was like, it was a mainstream sensation. And up until then, it still was. There was, it was very popular. But the fact that they advertised what's essentially, it is a kid's show for a primetime slot. They're like, hey, it's going to be on at this time. And we did. My parents watched it with us. I don't know if they liked it, but they watched it with us.
My
and it was
parents hated it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure my parents didn't love it, because honestly, that just meant they were beating the crap out of each other in the basement trying to do Power Ranger moves. So I'm sure they didn't love it from that perspective. But like I was saying, it was a big deal, and so that's my point, is that it came out with a bang, and it really has kind of been keeping that momentum going since. But what about you, man? So we talked about kind of how I was exposed to it. What are your earliest memories of it?
My earliest memories are just the commercials in general for the show. I don't remember how I got into it. I remember the toy commercials very, very vividly, seeing them, and it was cool. And I actually do remember why I got into it.
Okay.
I couldn't be a Ghostbuster because they were adults and scientists. Couldn't be a turtle because...
Well, they're turtles.
I'm a turtle. I'm not a turtle. So when this came out and they were teenagers, I was like, well, I'm going to be a teenager someday. Not that I really thought I was going to be a Power Ranger, but it was more relatable.
Well, they were like big kids that you could look up to, that theoretically you could see a big kid in the hallway at school and go, hey, maybe they're a Power Ranger.
Or like a camp counselor. That's what I viewed them as.
There you go. Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Like if you went to summer camp and you were like, 8, 9, 10 years old, and that camp counselor was there and he was a high school kid, that could have been one of the Power Rangers. So that's how I was able to relate to it. I don't remember a lot of interactions with friends with it. A very few. I remember the premiere episode of season 2 because it was such a big deal. The funny thing is, and we didn't talk about this before we went on air. I know I did see something you sent to me about Pudgy Pig, and then it hit me. One of the only other memories I have of watching Power Rangers with a friend is actually the Pudgy Pig episode.
Oh, okay.
It really is. I'm not making that up. I wish I was, but Pudgy Pig, I think because it was so, even as a kid, it was so stupid in a funny way that I remember it. I did have a garage sale at my mom's house, so I found all the VHS tapes, and they're just one episode.
Yeah,
which you figure how much did the parents pay for that VHS?
Oh, for tape? A 30-minute tape. You're probably looking at like $20, right? That's usually was the going rate for a whether it was a full-length movie or a TV show episode. That was because it was only one episode, right? They didn't do like multi-part episodes on one tape back then. It was one episode.
They didn't, and I had like each Ranger had like their own, like the first 5 episodes. Each Ranger had like their own like episode to kind of introduce themselves to you. Mm-hmm. So I remember I had the Yellow Ranger one. I had the Black Ranger one, and then the Tommy Saga, the Green Ranger, which
so let's talk about that. I want to talk about that too because I didn't write it down, but I just was thinking as we're doing this, and this is kind of what happens when we do these episodes, is I start thinking about things. So
which is great.
it is absolutely. Well, how big a deal though was the Green Ranger saga? Because that's what it was. It was. I mean, we're talking. What was it? 4 parts? I think it was a 4-part.
4 or 5, 6, something like that.
I think they even called it a mini series within the show back then. So so let's back up. So anyone who here has not watched Power Rangers, again, if you're listening to this, you're probably really confused anyway. But let me paint a picture here for you. So the Green Ranger. So for the longest time, you had the 5 Power Rangers. You had the red, yellow, blue, pink, and black Rangers. Right. That was it for the first season. For the most part, really. I mean, and there was a lot of episodes too, so you really got to know those 5 characters. All of a sudden, you got an episode where this new guy comes to the school where these teenagers go to school, and he's so cool. He's a martial artist. He's like, I mean, he's just so kind of a rebel almost in the way he presents himself, and everyone's like, oh, this guy's really cool. And it turns out that he becomes not enslaved, but under the spell of the evil villain. Possessed, sure. That's a much better word. By Rita Repulsa. She's the main villain of the show. She possesses the Green Ranger. She gives him evil Power Ranger powers. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And it was the Green Ranger, because you had all these other colors. All of a sudden you got this Green Ranger, and he looked different.
And the shield.
And he had a shield on his chest, and he had, instead of diamonds on his boots, he had triangles on his boots, and he had his own Zord, but Zords were these giant robots that they walked around in. He had a cool weapon. I mean, he was the coolest. And so the fact that he was coming there, and it was one Green Ranger, and he was destroying the Power Rangers every episode.
5-on-1, he was beating them up.
He was just,
he was vicious.
He was vicious, and so and they had to stop him. And so this epic, I mean, looking back, I've tried rewatching the Green Ranger saga as an adult, and there's certainly a lot of fun to it. It's not riveting. It's fun, but it's not like, I mean,
for the time it is though.
Well, for 6-year-old me, I'm like, oh my God, this is life-changing. So I'm loving it. It's incredible. And so I have deep memories of the Green Ranger saga, because then, at the end of the miniseries, he turns to the good side. He joins the Power Rangers. Now there's 6 Power Rangers, and for a while,
more toys.
Well, of course, yeah, and we'll get to that. Don't worry. But we're talking about how he's this ally to the Power Rangers, and then later on he starts losing his powers, so he's like almost this precious resource that they can't waste on every battle. So they gotta be, Now there's reasons that they did this in the show. Is because they were running out of footage from the Japanese show, which I didn't mention. The Power Rangers is based on an even longer running series in Japan called Super Sentai, which is basically literally everything you know of Power Rangers was first a Japanese show about superheroes. And, similar, but very different. I've never really watched it before. I think you have a little bit, Lou.
I've watched a little bit. I just watched a little bit of how do I explain this? So every year in Japan, it changes. Here in America, we kind of have like one season stretched out into 2 seasons. Every year in Japan, another season, another Ranger team.
They would do like a refresh every season, whereas here we kind of dragged it out because, I think American audiences got to know the Power Rangers, the characters, and they're like, well, okay, why not do another season with these guys? That they're popular. What if we change this up now? Kids are going to be confused. I think I don't know for sure. I suspect that's probably why they stuck with the American formula of keeping the same characters.
Yeah, that's why they did it, and that's when they started to change it the opposite way and follow the formula in Japan in like the early 2000s. It really started to suffer because you couldn't connect. Even as a kid, you couldn't connect to those characters. But if I may, I want to jump back to the Green Ranger saga for a moment. We talked about the Turtles before this, obviously. Mm-hmm. Not counting the movie. Because the movie, Shredder in the movies abducted Splinter, but you didn't see it.
Right.
And they imprisoned Splinter. They tied him up. It hit him like you gave him a backhand once. That was it.
Yep.
That's as vicious as you saw Shredder actually be.
Right.
Do you recall, like, in the TV show, Shredder actually doing something like
in the cartoon,
he was it?
In the cartoon, he was an idiot for the most part.
He was.
He was a comical, the comic relief. Now, I think Power Rangers had that, though, to a degree, as far as the villains being kind of comical and goofy sometimes.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But you figure you went from Shredder and Bebop and Rocksteady being menacing, but also kind of silly.
Yeah.
And then you see the Green Ranger. He's actually, like, doing bad things. He's, like, destroying their Zords. He's destroying their command center. He's attacking Zordon. He's doing, you're actually seeing it, whereas the Turtles, it was kind of not implied, but something bad happened and you didn't see it. Here you actually saw it and you went, oh, man, this guy, he's a bad guy.
Yeah, no, he was bad. And so I don't know. I almost wonder if it was just the times changing. The Turtles had come out, 5 years earlier. And so they're like, okay, well, maybe kids are able to handle, I don't know, different audience. I don't know. Or again, maybe it's the same kids that love Turtles are older now and are going to be into this type of thing more so. But I agree. He was a legit bad mamma jamma. And so, they had to turn him good because, and when he turned good, he was still a bad mamma jamma, but he was just on the good guy side. And I thought it was awesome.
It was fantastic. It was good storytelling for a kid's show. And now I'm going to go back even further. So like we said, it was at least a 4 to 6 part miniseries or episode. Reason I got out of Ghostbusters was, here's an episode, it's done. Here's an episode, it's done. And here's an episode, it's done. Yep. There was no sense of urgency. So the first time you saw on Power Rangers To Be Continued, you're like, well, what's going to happen? And they did have picked up, from the next episode.
Well, but they also had the standalone episodes that you could kind of watch in any order.
Oh yeah, of course,
for like syndication. But yeah, you had like the small mini story arcs throughout the series, and again, I thought that was pretty great. That's almost that soap opera. We talk about it, the fact that it's been around for basically 30 years straight. Almost that soap opera feel where everything is one giant story that you can kind of backtrack and trace back through. And again, going to go back even further than our Turtles episode, our first episode, rather. Sorry, it's been that long. Was pro wrestling, and that kind of has that soap opera feel to it too, where it's that long term storytelling where you could literally look at a current wrestling storyline. If you were to put wrestling on now, you could pretty easily trace it back to the 1980s. You could literally backtrack and go, okay, because this happened here, so you can kind of reverse engineer it. That's kind of what was cool about shows like the Power Rangers, where like, okay, you've got these current Power Rangers, but how did that happen? And you can kind of go back through and see them. Now, again, the episodes a lot of times were kind of standalone, but in general, you saw that progression throughout the seasons, which was kind of cool. I'll be honest. So I mean, they've been going for a long time. I stopped around season 4, which was Power Rangers Zeo, which I think you as well, at least back when we were kids, is when we stopped kind of watching it. Because I think at that point I'd moved on to other stuff, which we'll probably talk about in future episodes. But yeah, once season 3 or 4 came around, I had to have been close to, I guess, 10 or 11. And I still liked it. It was cool, but there was other stuff that was catching my attention. A lot of superhero cartoons, honestly, was really cool to watch. And so I just wasn't as into the Power Rangers anymore as at that point. What about you?
It was pretty much the same thing. It was Zeo, which is season 4, was when I started to get out of it. I was still going to school, and I would take the VHS tape and I would record it the entire day. We couldn't figure out how to set the timer on the VCR. 90s kids know how that is.
Oh, yeah.
Can't figure that out. So I would set it right before I went to school, and we had a long enough tape that when I came home and I rewound it, I would get to watch Power Rangers. But yeah, season 3 and 4 is when I fell out of it, and it has a lot to do with the movie, and I know we're going to discuss that in a few moments, but the movie actually got me out of it. Not right away, but after the movie happened, then season 3 came out, and I'm, wait, what's going on here? So talking about consistency in canon, Power Rangers dropped the ball, in my opinion, and I don't think I was alone. There was a lot of my friends that kind of got out of it around that time. Like you said, things were changing, times were changing, we were growing up, and I think they dropped the ball, especially with that movie.
So, okay, that's actually a good segue, because there have been several movies, and so we're going to kind of talk through our experience with those. So the first Power Rangers movie that came out, it was called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. And so I don't know if it's because the Turtles movie had come out when I was so young. I mean, I was only 3 when it came out, but like there was no hype for me to see it. I just, all of a sudden it existed. So I think by the time I actually got into Turtles, there was already the movie anyway. So it wasn't like a big hype thing. With Power Rangers, I would see these trailers on the previews on TV and go, oh my God. So, I mean, I was hyped for the Power Rangers movie. Now I didn't see it in theaters.
I saw it on the drive-ins.
Oh, there you go. So, no, I didn't see it. That's amazing. No, I didn't see it in theaters. I remember seeing it on, actually, I think I saw a bootleg copy of it at my friend's house. They had gotten a bootleg tape that he had bought at a flea market of somebody recording it in the theater.
Wow.
And it was terrible. 90s. Oh my God, the quality was awful.
Was that the first bootleg you ever saw?
It probably was, honestly.
All right.
If you don't count like when you like rip a VHS tape, like my mom used to copy VHS tapes to other tapes with like 2 VCRs and 2 TVs plugged into each other.
Very smart.
Yep. So we did that, but I mean, this was like legit. Like, I mean, it was. I didn't enjoy it. I don't even think I finished it, to be honest with you. But my friend always had all these movies that were still out in theaters because they were all bootlegs, and I watched them like, this is terrible. And then I ended up seeing the real ones. I'm like, oh, this is so much better. So I'm trying. I can't remember. I remember we bought the tape on VHS, and that's probably the first time I watched it. But I was super hyped for it. Because I was really into the Power Rangers, and I remember because when that first movie came out, I mean, obviously they had the toys, but do you remember the McDonald's toys?
A little bit. I don't remember. I know they came out, but I think they were just the Zords, perhaps?
Well, so what it was the Zords from the movie, and then it was also a minifigure of the Rangers.
Oh, yes, I do.
And so, and I remember, oh my God, so I had all of them, and I don't think I went to McDonald's all that often, so I'm wondering if my parents just like bought a lot of them, or if they ended up getting them with friends. But we got all the Power Rangers. Where they are now, who knows, but they're probably worth a decent amount of money. But I remember I was on like a summer, we used to do, this is kind of on a tangent, but our school, my school that I went to had like a summer rec program you could sign up for, where they would have like activities and outings that like parents could like drop their kids off to do, which is really nice, actually. I don't really do that anymore, but it was really fun. So anyway, we were doing a road trip.
Spoken like a dad. Why don't they do this anymore?
I know, right? Back in my day. Right. But no, so we went to this place. I don't know if you know this place. We're going to, we're kind of showing through on where we're from. So there's it was downstate in the Catskills. For me, it was downstate. For you, it was upstate. It was called Howe Caverns.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
You have? Okay, cool. So we did a road trip to Howe Caverns, and I remember we stopped at McDonald's along the way, and I don't know why I vividly remember this, but I got the Billy McDonald's toy. So it was Billy with the Wolf Zord. And I think my brother got the Falcon Zord with the White Ranger because he was on the trip with me too. And I remember I got a chocolate shake, and I remember that because I had got a little souvenir cup from Howe Caverns, and I had poured my chocolate shake into it, ruined it. It was one of those collapsible cups. Do you remember those where like you could like pull it out and then you could like slap it shut and put a lid on it and carry it?
You could put it in your pocket.
A little collapsible cup, and I poured chocolate milkshake into it, and I ruined it, and I couldn't use it ever again. It was sticky and gross, and so that. But I had the toys, and I thought they were the coolest toys ever. And I remember it didn't work obviously, but I remember I used to try to take the toys and try to form them into the Megazord from the movie, and you couldn't obviously because they were just little pieces of plastic that didn't go together or anything like that. But I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then I had some of the movie action figures. Well, I think I had like one of them. I had like a Red Ranger, and you know what they did? You remember what they did for those action figures? That was like, it was so lame.
They changed? They made them like a metallic color.
That's all I did was they used like metallic paint on them, and then they resold them with a different logo on their chest because they got different Zords, so they had different logos.
There's a story about that.
Oh,
about
okay.
Those toys. So they didn't sell very well.
Okay.
Because it was the bubble was starting. It didn't burst, but it was fading a little bit.
Okay.
So the toys they made for the movies were metallic.
Yep.
They had such excess inventory of them that in season 3 they gave the Power Rangers quote unquote upgraded armor in the show, and it was just sparkly outfits.
Oh, so they could resell the metallic.
So they said metallic armor Rangers, take the inventory from the movie, repackage them, season 3 metallic armor Rangers.
I actually don't remember that. Yes. I remember season 3 because of like they had like the ninja suits, which were from the movie. I don't remember the metallic suits though.
They weren't very good.
Okay, I'll have to go back and research it. But anyway, so the movie, I mean, just we'll talk about it real quick here. I actually really enjoyed the movie. I mean, it was different, but it was still similar. The suits were kind of upgraded and like
I liked the suits.
I thought they were great, and I kind of wish that they had done that in the series. But the movie, I mean, it was, again, it's a kid's movie. It's not, classics, it's not a high quality cinematic adventure, but for a kid, dude, who loved the Power Rangers.
Nothing about Power Rangers is high cinematic or quality or anything. I'm sorry, that's terrible radio or podcast, whatever you want to call it,
whatever,
that I couldn't hold my laughter about high quality Power Rangers.
It's not, man. You're not looking at cinema purity here, but,
no.
as a kid, I loved it, man. It was great. I thought, they had a new villain in it that was really kind of scary. Ivan Ooze. I mean, it was creepy.
Who scared you more, though? The debut of Lord Zed or the debut of Ivan? Well, not debut and only appearance of Ivan Ooze.
Ivan Ooze? Oh, that's a good question. Zed or Ivan Ooze?
Because Lord Zed
I mean, he was scary.
He
I mean,
was.
that like because I've gone back and heard about like parents complained that he was too scary in the earlier episodes, and they had to make him more goofy as he went on because they tried making him a serious character.
He was for a while,
and he's a scary looking guy. Yeah, if you've ever so again, if you've never seen Power Rangers and you're listening to this, go Google Lord Zed. Just get a look at what this guy looked like. He literally looked like a skinless dude covered in metal armor. Like, I mean, that's the only way I can describe him. And he had this big old staff, and I remember the first episode, he had like a snake wrapped around his arm, which was kind of creepy. So yeah, he was scary. And then, so Ivan Ooze, I'm trying to think of, what's the best way you would describe Ivan Ooze?
A purple Uncle Fester.
That's perfect. A purple Uncle Fester with extra wrinkles in his head. That was Ivan Ooze. But for some reason, I don't know if this is the way they lit his face, but the guy that plays him just has a creepy face. Because you actually see him in the movie without any makeup on when he's in disguise as a human. Well, there's some makeup on him, but it's less. And it's still creepy, though. So anyway, I don't know, man. I got to say it's a tie. What about you?
Oh, definitely Lord Zed.
Okay, so Lord Zed was definitely scary.
Definitely Lord Zed. And then the thing about Power Rangers, I don't want to backtrack too much, but we talked about the Green Ranger and his, him being evil and seeing him destroy the Rangers a little bit and this and that. Do you remember that the premiere episode we talked about when season 2 started primetime? And I get it. Everybody joked the Power Rangers were a glorified toy commercial, which it, for the most part, was.
Yeah. But
in primetime, Power Rangers lost. Like,
they did.
Legitimately lost to the villain. Not to be it was to be continued, but they lost. So their Zords were destroyed. I get it. New toys and this and that. From a marketing standpoint, it's a good idea, but from a kid's standpoint, it's another victory for the bad guy. And Dan, you touched on this, and I'm definitely not going to go into too detailed about this. The Japanese show is different in terms of the way it's produced a little bit, but the language is different.
Okay.
So they never said in Power Rangers, I'm going to kill you.
Right.
Or go to hell. They actually do say that in Sentai. Like, I've watched a few episodes of what Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1 was in Japan, and they say that, I'm going to kill you, go to hell, I'm going to wish death upon you, and the equivalent of Rita Repulsa, who's the villain in the first season, wants to kill all the children. It sounds dark.
Yeah. Well, and
it certainly was.
And when it's funny too, because then you look at other things as far as differences between like American and Japanese culture, and they're weird about other things that they want to censor. Not what you're thinking about, Lou, but for kids stuff too. Like they had weird things that they would not show even kids or whatever. Whereas here it was totally fine. And anyway, yeah, no, man, it's wild because you can, now it's a lot more available online. You can go watch what the Power Rangers are based on, and you're right, you do see a huge difference in I don't know if it's the maturity of the content, because it's still silly, but it's a darker silly, maybe edgier. Maybe you could be a teenager and watch that and be like, yeah, this is kind of cool. Whereas here, if you watched Power Rangers as a teenager, you probably didn't have a lot of friends at the lunch table.
No,
which sounds terrible because there's nothing wrong with it, but you just weren't watching it as a teenager necessarily. Yeah. Or if you were, you weren't admitting it to anyone.
You're right, because when Zeo came out, because the original Red Ranger left, he was the leader of the team, came back in Zeo, and that got me back into it a little bit, but it was very I didn't really tell anybody.
Yeah.
I was watching it. But I agree with you. If the tone of Sentai and that tone stayed in America or came over to America, might have lasted a little bit longer because of the language, because of the little bit darker narrative it had towards it. They weren't teenagers in Japan. They were gods, and we're not going to go into that, but it was a different tone than it was here in America.
Yep. So, all right. So again, that was just talking back about the movies again. So, the first movie is the only one that I saw. I know they've had one more theatrical movie from
two.
Two if you count the reboot. We're going to go there too.
Oh, okay.
So you had the Power Rangers Turbo movie, which I didn't see. I never watched. You said
either
you
did I,
watched
because I was out of it by Turbo. So Turbo was, let me get in my hands.
Was it 97 or 98? I think.
Yeah, around 97. So that was season 5.
Okay. So you were like close to a teenager at that point. So again,
yes.
going back to, we didn't really watch it at this point. We had moved on to other things.
We certainly have. But I went back and I watched it. And one of the reasons I got out of Power Rangers, because I was out of it at this point, the movie was okay, the original movie.
Yeah.
But the one thing that bothered me the most was it wasn't canon. And even as a kid, it bothered me. The suits were cool. The villain was cool. The CGI was okay at the time. It's one of the worst CGIs. If you ever go back and watch, it is.
Oh, it is
terrible. Absolutely terrible.
But and I guess even back then, it probably wasn't great.
It wasn't good because they used to use the suits and the guy in the Godzilla-esque suit for the TV show, and they tried CGI for the movie. Wasn't good.
So I think we should explain. I don't know. We know what canon means, but just to explain it to people who don't know what canon means. So what
this would be
means,
a great example of canon.
Yeah. So canon is where something you watch a TV show, read a book, and if it's canon, that means it happened in whatever the fictional universe is. So every single season of Power Rangers is canon to the Power Rangers universe. This movie, however, basically played with elements from the series, but it didn't happen in the main storyline of Power Rangers. It basically, if this was an alternate universe where you still had the Power Rangers, this happened, and it's nothing at all related to the original series. Now, they did try, though. You remember, they did try to incorporate some of it into that third season, but to me, I was like very disappointed because it was not even close to the same level of whatever, and so I was disappointed.
What disappointed me. I knew, and only Power Ranger fans will understand this, I knew something was up in the movie when they morphed out of order.
Yeah.
I knew as a kid, I'm like, wait a minute. And again, if you're not a Power Ranger fan, you're not going to understand that, and I'm not going to go into the details, but if you're a Ranger fan and you saw the movie and you know the show, when they morphed out of order, you went, wait a minute. It's been 2.5, 3 years. Something's not right. They took elements from what was going to be in season 3, put it in a movie, saw the movie, great. New outfits, new weapons, new Zords. Can't wait for season 3 to start. Season 3 starts, and they're not there. Wait, what did I just watch? Right. Does the movie not count? Then they did it in the TV show a different way, same result. So that was actually what killed Power Rangers for me. I'm like, okay, I'm done with this because they're like, I felt like they were changing things as I'm watching. Like, oh, we're going to do this. Wait, never mind. Don't pay attention to that. Give us your money, buy the toys. Save your allowance, but that doesn't count.
So it's funny, and we won't go into it too much, but you mentioned like the morphing out of order thing, and honestly, like I feel
still
like this
bothers me.
Well, no, but I'm just saying it's still, again, this is one of those where if you grew up during this time period and you watch this show, I guarantee if I said, all right, I want you to call out all the morphs, all the Ranger morphs in order, I guarantee you could do it because it was because it was in all the commercials, it was Mastodon, Pterodactyl, whatever. And so I of course have it memorized, at least for that first few seasons.
Yep.
And so, it was one of those where like, if you're on Facebook and you like, all right, let's start this off, Mastodon, I guarantee the next person's going to put Pterodactyl and you're going to make it all the way through because people just remember it. And so you're right. When they did them out of order, I remember that. I don't remember it taking away from my enjoyment of the movie, obviously, but I did notice, I was like, well, that's weird. Why'd they morph out of order? That was really strange. Because it had a certain thing, like you had expectations because of the show. And then they obviously went back to those expectations with the show, but it was different at that point.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so yeah. But yeah, man. So we talked about the Turbo movie, and then they did reboot it. That was the only other movie that I know of is the reboot movie from 2016, where they basically said, okay, we're going to take everything we love about the old school Power Rangers, we're going to reboot them for a brand new audience. This would have been almost 25 years after the original show came out. So good enough time, amount of time had passed. The show was obviously still going on in first run. But this was a reboot of essentially the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from the original, that we grew up with. And so now they're remaking it for us as adults. And so, I saw it not in theaters. I saw it, I guess I just probably watched it on my phone, to be honest with you, and I liked it. It was good. I enjoyed it. I like some of the throwbacks. I thought the action was pretty good. I don't like that in the movie they don't become Power Rangers until like 20 minutes left of the movie.
Oh, I agree.
Now I think it's because they were trying to set it up as like a franchise where they were having sequels and they were supposed to, and they just never did. But I think this movie suffers because of that, because again, you don't get a lot of what we wanted, which was that Power Ranger action. The action we got, I thought was phenomenal though.
I disagree.
Okay.
Politely. It's weird because out of the 3 movies, the original movie, the Turbo movie, and the reboot movie. The only one I didn't see at the time was Turbo. Didn't watch the season of Turbo, which, you know, we had mentioned that Zeo was season 4 when we both kind of fell out of it. They made it canon in Zeo, in the Turbo movie. So you saw the Zeo Rangers, they lose their powers, they get new powers, and then it's the jump start for the Turbo season. So it was good. It had a good storyline. We used that word canon before. It had all the elements of what you actually would want in a movie. Storytelling, some action, some surprises. Not a masterpiece by any means, but it was a good Power Ranger movie, show, production, whatever you want to call it. The reboot, you're 100% right. That's how I viewed it, as this is setting up what they're hoping to do in a second and third movie. I compared it to the newer Godzilla movies. Did you see those newer Godzilla movies?
I've only seen the first new one, Godzilla.
And you didn't see a lot of Godzilla.
You didn't at all.
Because they kept building it up.
Him.
Yeah. Yes. They kept building up. Godzilla's coming. There's his foot. There's his leg. The battle's about to happen. Shut the door. It's like, I just want to see Godzilla.
Yeah.
But that was a strong enough fan base here in America that even though it didn't perform very well, we knew what we were going to get in the next movies. So you had the second and third movie. Power Rangers, they kept dangling that carrot. You're about 80% through the movie and they finally become Power Rangers.
But you have to admit, though, because I agree, but you have to admit that when they were Power Rangers, that action when they did it was dope.
Oh, it was.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you didn't get it until the end of the movie. The suits were great. The fight scenes were fantastic. You just didn't get enough of it because they were teasing you, and they did it on purpose. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. So we agree on that. The action once it happens was amazing. It was just like it was only 20 minutes of it, and so you're like, I want more. You want more, and you were hoping to get more, and they even did some teasers after the credits of they teased a new Green Ranger, which again, as your childhood, you're like, oh, that's amazing.
Yep.
And then it just never happened. They not canceled because I mean the Power Rangers still going, but they're going to reboot it again. Did you know that?
Of course, I knew that.
They're
they're rebooting it again, but here's my problem. I'm throwing things now.
Oh, hold on, he's standing on his soapbox now.
They didn't yell out the names of the morph.
They had to get with the times, Lou. Do you realize how silly it would look to call out the names of their dinosaurs in real time?
There's something they could have done. There's something they could have done.
And you know what? I guarantee you, if they had come out with a second movie, they probably would have addressed that.
Probably when they actually called for the Zord, but
something.
I understood what they were going for. I didn't hate it. I still don't hate it. I liked it. I said, if this is going to be a foundation. I think you would have liked it more if that's what I was saying. I think you would have liked it more if it truly led to additional movies where they could build even more on it. Like Episode 7 of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. And that's, unfortunately, though, that's the risk is all of these movie companies, they want their stuff to turn into franchises, so they tease you with the first one. But if it doesn't perform well, they're not going to make a sequel, and then you're left with a lackluster movie like this one.
Could you imagine if the original Iron Man did that?
Well, I mean, that's the thing is...
Could have changed the world. Literally, that movie changed the world for the good.
I mean, it did. 100%. Well, and again, I'm sure we'll do a future episode on Marvel movies because we got a lot to... Well, no, we won't because that was when we were adults, really, when they came out, except for some of the early ones. But, Iron Man was a good movie by itself without setting up the universe. It happened to also set up that Marvel universe.
Exactly.
But it was a great movie by itself, and it didn't... you know what I mean? So, you're right. More movie companies need to think about that. If they're going to, come out with a franchise, don't bank on sequels. Like, make it a good standalone story. You can still make a sequel even if you wrap up your story. Like, it's totally doable. You could have a complete ending and say, hey, we're going to still do a sequel. Because they used to do that all the time back in the day. You look back at the Batman movies, right? The Michael Keaton, the first one with the Joker, that ended. That was done. We set it up. Batman's good. Batman Returns came out 3 years later, sorry. And same thing, it's like, okay, we're back in this world now, and that's it worked. There was no questioning it. You don't have to make a giant story. You don't have to make a 2-hour-long TV episode of a season that may not happen. You see what I'm saying?
And the other thing is, and you're 100% right. The other thing is, maybe not for Power Rangers because they're certainly not as developed as these other shows or movies franchises I'm going to mention. The new thing with movies is not explaining the origins of some of these characters for the 15,000th time.
Right.
Spider-Man, Hulk,
yeah,
Batman. Like, I just saw The Batman a couple of days ago. I rented it. Yes, I said that. I rented it. Actually went to Redbox and rented it. But there was no origins because we know that already.
Right.
And the Batman movies killed it over and over again. I know about his parents. I know he got bit by a Spider-Man got bit by a spider. I know the Hulk was gamma rays. I get it. I feel like that's kind of changed. Like, you have the ability to do your homework before you get to the theaters. Because for the most part, if you're going to go see a Power Ranger movie, you probably have a good idea of what's going on.
Yeah, if you're going to see the new one in theaters, like, I mean, the core audience for that is people that grew up with it. They know what happens.
Yes.
But anyway, all right. Well, listen, this is not a movie podcast. So we're not going to go too deep down that rabbit hole because I could talk for hours. We have before. We've talked hours about stuff like this.
It's true. We have.
But going back to as a kid, watching those movies that came out when we were kids, loved them, had a great time, was not expecting cinematic masterpieces, and we're not disappointed in the process. All right, so that's let's wrap it up the movies. Let's transition over to the video games because there was a few video games that we both played. Why don't you kick this one off, man? Because you had a few of them, and then I'll talk about the ones that I played as well, or we'll talk through them together.
Yeah, I had two games for Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, one on each system. The one I had on Super Nintendo was the first official American Power Rangers game. They had some imported ones from Japan, but again, we're not going to go down that road. So it was just a classic beat 'em up, start left, move right. You do half the level as the just the teenager, and you beat up the bad guys. And then you get halfway through and you morphed. Ha! See, they morphed halfway through. Not 3/4 of the way through, halfway through.
That's right. Well, because in the show, they would have fight scenes where they're out of their suits, and then they go, oh, we're overwhelmed. We need the power of the Power Rangers. We got to morph.
We need to sell those toys.
That's right.
So they morphed, and so it was cool. And they fought differently. So you were playing as the same character, but two different ways. They had their own unique special moves, special attacks. Villains.
You know what I didn't like about that game, though? So, because I played it. I never owned it, but I played it at a friend's house. He had a Super Nintendo, and so I played it at his house. You know what I didn't like about it, though? Because I knew this back then. Go ahead.
No Green Ranger?
No, not even the No Green Ranger. I was fine with that. I didn't like that no matter which Power Ranger you picked, it was literally the same Power Ranger character on screen, just painted a different color.
Yeah, it was. It was weird to see Trini, who is the petite yellow ranger, same size as Jason, the muscle-bound leader Red Ranger. But
what about the Pink Ranger? Same thing. It literally. So
did she have a skirt at least?
No, literally. If you go back and play that,
let me take a look.
All right. While you're googling that, let me explain. So basically, every sprite is a video game character. That if you're playing a video game like a 2D game, a sprite is what's moving on the screen. Anyway, so no matter which Power Ranger you picked, it was the same sprite, and it was the Red Ranger, I'm pretty sure, and they were literally all just colored a different color, and it was the same. So like you had this big bulky, and it looked fine for the Red Ranger, but then you've got the Pink Ranger and the Yellow Ranger, and they literally had that same muscly look with the it looks so terrible, so disappointing.
Oh wow, she didn't have the skirt.
See, I told you so. It literally was just such a cop out. The game itself was good. I thought it was kind of hard, to be honest with you. It was a pretty challenging game because you can only play one player. It wasn't a two-player game.
I don't remember.
It was because I tried because my friend we had to take turns, and so it was a one-player game. Now,
that's terrible.
I know, but guess what game came out that was a two-player game, and the Power Rangers look like Power Rangers.
The movie, the game.
The movie, the game, which
featuring
I rented.
Ivan Ooze.
Featuring Ivan Ooze. It was right on the screen there, man. And so that one I rented at my local grocery store. Did your grocery store have video game rentals, by the way?
No, they did not. Was it a chain or was it like a smaller, like mom and pop grocery store?
No. So no one's going to know what this place is, but Hannaford. You know Hannaford because you live up there still. But yep. Hannaford had a video store, like a video rental section within their grocery store. And it was right next to the deli. And I don't know why I remember that, but so they had video. I mean, I remember I rented Nintendo games, Sega games. Yeah, so I rented Nintendo and Sega games there. And I remember we rented several times the Power Rangers movie game. And I loved that game.
That was hard, though.
But you had 2 players. Honestly, I thought that was easier than the Super Nintendo one.
Really?
I did, because I was able to beat that game in one sitting pretty easily, and so I loved it. And again, my brother played with me, and so we would play as the 2 Rangers, which again, I'd like to reiterate, looked like the Power Rangers. It had like screenshots from the movies within, like, peppered throughout the different scenes, like between levels, and oh my god! So that was still like one of my favorite beat 'em up video games of all time. Like, it's up there. I love it so much. But anyway, so there was a game that came out before that one and after the Super Nintendo one, or you know what, it might have come around the same time as the Super Nintendo one on Sega Genesis, which was a fighting game. So it was a different style.
Yeah.
I didn't own that one, but my cousins had that one. So I would go over to their house and we would play the Power Rangers fighting game. And it was basically just 2 Rangers or 2 characters fighting against each other. And honestly, it wasn't anything special. I remember it was kind of cool. I've since gone back and tried to play it, and it's whatever. I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
It is what it is. If you're a Ranger fan, you would go back, you'd play it now, either because you haven't played it in X amount of years, or you didn't have that system back in the day.
Yeah.
You play it once, you play it twice, and you're like, okay, I've played it.
Well, and I'll say this too, at least when comparing it to the Ninja Turtles, I think Power Rangers kind of went more all in on the toy side of merchandising. They didn't put as much effort into the video games as the Ninja Turtles did. And we talked about this on the Turtles episode of like just the different
Turtle games were amazing.
So many games. Whereas here you really only had a handful, at least in these earlier generations where I would have played them. I know there's other games that came out for like the Nintendo 64, the PlayStation that I didn't have. I never even at that point I had moved past Power Rangers anyway, so I just didn't have an interest in the games. But I know there was a few more that came out, and then there's some that come out now, and some of them are like reboots or like not reboots, but they're based on the earlier iterations that we watched as kids, and some of them are very fun. But I basically stopped, except for some of these newer ones. I stopped with the ones on Sega and Super Nintendo and not Nintendo, but Super Nintendo. But what about you, man? Where did you end up stopping on the games?
Probably that Sega Genesis game is the last one I played.
Okay.
I did play the fighting game on Super Nintendo. I think it was just Power Rangers, the fighting edition or fighting game. It had Lord Zed and the Season 2 Megazord, the Thunder Megazord. So you played as the Megazords, so it was something different.
It was like a robot fighting game, basically.
Yeah, so you were the Megazord, or you were the White Tiger Zord, which was the Green Ranger turning into the White Ranger. So you played as the Zords against the villains, and that was something different. I played that on emulation. That was actually a pretty fun game. I enjoyed that. Like you said, they made N64 games, PS1 games. I was totally out of Power Rangers by then. Played them on emulation. Oh, they're terrible. They are really bad. Even for back then, you could tell they were very, very bad. Game Boy games, didn't touch them then or now. But like you said, the games that are out now is actually a fighting game. It came out, I want to say, right when COVID happened. So it was one of those games that got me through everything.
Yep.
It's a fighting game through the history of Power Rangers, so it's not just...
It's kind of like a best of, like a...
Yeah, they cherry pick some popular characters, mixing up the new guys with the old ones, some villains, this and that, and it plays like Marvel versus Capcom. So if you're into that kind of stuff, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Multi characters at the same time, you can tag in and out. It's very good, very user friendly. Pick up and play. You don't need to know about anything about Power Rangers to actually enjoy the game. If you're a fighting game fan, you're probably going to like it.
You're going to have fun. Yeah. And I played it. When I went up to visit you, we played it. I'd never played it before. We played it together, and I had a lot of fun with it. You're right. It's very easy to pick up and play, and I appreciated the throwback to the earlier Power Ranger stuff that I knew as a kid, because that's really the characters I think I usually picked because I knew them. So there's kind of someone. So if you stuck with the Power Rangers, there's something for everyone there. If you stopped watching it when I did, you could still pick it up and have a good time with it. So that was really cool. So I think in closing on the video games of Power Rangers, they're good. They're not amazing. Compared to the video game staying power of like the Ninja Turtles, not even close. But still fun. There's some little hidden gems in there, I think. But Where I think Power Rangers did give Turtles a run for their money is what we're going to talk about next, which is the toys. Because I had a lot of Power Ranger toys. Probably not as many as Turtle toys, but I was also kind of getting out of action figures at this time too. But my God, I mean, so many Power Rangers.
There was a lot.
There was a lot of Power Ranger toys, and I didn't have all of them. I had a good amount of stuff. But I know they were in such high demand. Like I remember this is a story that, where my mom and I had gone to see a movie together, and we never really did that much. And so like it was like a kind of like a mother-son, outing kind of deal. And it was a lot of fun. We went to dinner, and then we went to the movies, and then we went to Kmart afterwards, to walk around. And I remember seeing these Power Ranger stuffed animals, and they weren't stuffed; it was plushes, I guess, but they were like 3 feet tall. Do you remember those?
Kind of. It was the Rangers themselves. It wasn't like a bear or anything like that, right?
No. It was like a Power Ranger, but it was like 3 feet tall. Which, I mean, again, for me as a kid, I was probably no more than 4 foot something. So like, it was almost my height. And so, like I remember we didn't buy it that day, but I said, oh my gosh, like that is the coolest thing. So Santa, of course, brought it for Christmas for me that year, and it was amazing. And so he was in my room for years. It was the white Power Ranger. Anyway, so I have that funny memory. And I remember there was I guess it was a mom had come up to us in the store and was like, excuse me. And she was holding 2 Power Rangers action figures and was like, which one of these would my son like more? And I don't remember what they were, but I remember saying something like, well, this one's great because he actually almost beat the Power Rangers one time. And my mom started laughing because I knew what her son,
stuff. Yep.
I knew what her son would love because I was watching Power Rangers at the time. But my God, the toys, man, like action figures, you had the Zords, you had the weapons, you could get their weapons, you had all kinds of stuff. I mean, I think I had a clock at one point. I had one of those Tiger Electronic Power Ranger games.
Oh, Tiger games. Those are the best. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's sarcasm right there.
Right? Yeah. I had a very knockoff version of the Power Morpher. And by knockoff, I mean it was like a solid piece of plastic that made noise. And so it was like a licensed product, but it wasn't the cool one that you could buy. My friend had rich dentist dad friend had all the cool Power Ranger toys. So at least I got to play with them at his house, but they weren't mine. Mm-hmm. But I mean, what about you, dude? Did you have a lot of the Power Ranger stuff, like toys wise?
I did. I think I had more Power Rangers than Turtles because I think I was towards the tail end of the Turtle bubble. Like the really big, I mean, Turtles lasted, but like their really apex time, I was a little bit towards the end of it.
Yeah.
So, but Power Rangers, like that was the prime time. Like the age was there. For me, I was the right age. My parents, with economics and things like that, it was a good time. Not dentists, but, doing okay. So it kind of lined up with the age, the income, being in Metro New York and having all the toy stores and the, comic book stores. But the problem is you're in Metro New York because everybody wants them. And they were super hard to find. So the comic book store by our house, the guy used to go down to Virginia and buy them because nobody was buying them. He'd buy hundreds of them. Bring them up, and then obviously flip them. Common practice at a collectible or comic book store. But he didn't charge my dad that much extra for them. A couple bucks, but not like a 50% markup, maybe like a 25% markup.
Right.
So I didn't have, when they first came out, I didn't have a lot. Like the first season, guys, very few. I remember the first toys I got, and I remember seeing, isn't it weird how you remember certain things, like really vividly?
Oh, yeah. The commercials. I remember certain commercials.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about the chocolate milk and House Cavern. I remember in my living room, I had the box with Goldar, and these were the bigger figures. Yeah. Do you remember that? They had two. Mm-hmm. Power Rangers was so big, like the first 2 years they were out. They had 2 versions of every figure. They had like the 6-inch ones, and then they had like the maybe 3-4-inch ones. But I remember I got the 6-inch Goldar, and then like the 6-inch blue and black Ranger.
Yep.
And then I got the cheap Megazord with his legs. Only his legs came apart. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So okay. Do you remember the flip head Power Rangers? That was the ones that I mostly had. And I actually remember this. I'll tell you a story about this. So I got those for the first time. It was my second grade. I guess I was turning 7. So it was my 7th birthday party. I was in 2nd grade because it was the same year that I had my friend's, the rich dentist dad friend who was my friend in 2nd grade. And I wanted Power Ranger toys. That's all I wanted. So I had several people get me the flip head Power Rangers, but my birthday party was at McDonald's. Did you ever have a birthday party at McDonald's?
No.
Did you know that was a thing, though?
I do know it was a thing. I think I've gone to them, but I don't think I personally had one there.
Okay.
No.
So there was a McDonald's. It's right by your house, actually. Well, no, it's up a little further north. It's in Queensbury. But it was McDonald's that had a play place. And, I always wanted a party. I'd been to that McDonald's before, but I'd always wanted a party there. So I finally got my birthday party at McDonald's. And so I got Power Ranger toys. And then this is so random, and we'll probably never do an episode on it, so I'll just talk about it now. I got an action figure of a character called Spawn. Have you ever heard of Spawn?
I do remember Spawn. I knew nothing about the show, nothing about the comics.
Oh, me neither.
He just looked awesome.
He looked so cool, and so I loved that figure. I found out later that it was a comic book, and they had a movie that was coming out a few years after that, which was cool. But anyway, so fond memories, and it was just wild that you could have I don't think you can anymore. Maybe you can. I don't know. If you're listening to this and you've had a birthday party recently at McDonald's, let us know, because I'm curious if they're still doing that
for
kind of
you
thing.
In your 30s or for your kids. It depends.
Hey man, whatever, dude.
Why not?
Like would you not have a birthday? I would have a birthday party at McDonald's now.
I mean, I think there's worse places to have a birthday party than McDonald's, considering what we've all gone through in the last 2 or 3 years. So why the hell not?
So I read this somewhere. I think it's true. I'll have to try it out. But apparently, they still make birthday cakes at some McDonald's. You can go ask and buy a birthday
ask for
cake.
it. Yes,
well,
you
that's what I'm saying.
Secret password.
It's basically. But I think you can get a birthday cake from McDonald's still. So if you're driving home and it's your kid's birthday party and shoot, you forgot the cake, stop at your local McDonald's, folks. They may have the right cake for you. They might be able to hook you up.
Or if you just want cake, stop by McDonald's and say it's your kid's birthday.
Yeah, man. You just want cake. All right, cool. So I mean, the toys were huge. I remember when I was maybe a year older, I would go visit my aunt down in Georgia, which is funny because that's where I live now. I would go visit her in Georgia, and my mom would give me spending money. And now I think ideally it was to buy food while I was there, like so that my aunt wasn't having to buy my food. Of course
you definitely didn't do that. No,
I saved it, and I made my aunt drive me to Walmart or Kmart or whatever, and I bought Power Ranger Megazords. Not once, but twice. I bought the Thunder Megazord, and then I bought the White Tiger Zord. And my God, I felt like the coolest kid ever. I played with those toys for way longer than I needed to.
Yeah, same here. I got my money's worth.
Loved them so much. I don't know where they are now. They're probably worth a lot of money, and I should have saved them. Most of my toys. Yeah, I figured
they've aged very well with their pricing. I do remember, even when the toys were somewhat available in the stores, for some reason the yellow and pink, the female Rangers, were very hard to find. I remember finding those in the store. I think they were the season 2 edition. They had like the button on the back, and their arm or their leg would kick out. They were
that's the ones I had. Yep. I had a yellow Ranger, and I had a red Ranger, and I had a white Ranger.
I had those. I did have the flip heads, but then I got the villains that were the size of the flip heads. So I had those as well. I had the smaller of the original Megazords. Like I said, it didn't come apart like a Transformer. They made those. I think you said you had that with the Thunder Megazord. I had that too with the Thunder Megazord, the season 2 guy. But the original one, just the legs came off. I didn't get the Dragon Zord, which came with the Green Ranger. But there's a funny story I have about the White Ranger. So in storyline, not going to go crazy details. Green Ranger lost his powers, but the guy that played him, Tommy, Jason David Frank is his real name, was moving merchandise. He was really well liked. They had, from the Japanese footage, a White Ranger coming in, so they just made him the White Ranger. That was the White Tiger Zord Dan was just talking about. So do you remember all the knockoff Power Ranger stuff you would have at like the dollar stores or the cheap stores?
We had those too. My mom would buy all that stuff. So I don't remember what the store, I think it was the dollar store that was in the mall, the aviation mall that I used to go to. And they had, but there was some stuff that wasn't just $1. So I don't know if it was considered a dollar store, but
she bought dollar stores like that.
I know, right? Yeah. So she bought these Power Ranger costumes. But they weren't Power Rangers. They were very clearly knockoffs. And it was a white, maybe a pink, but a red and a blue. and maybe even a black. Like she bought a bunch for us, and so I think they're like $10 each or something like that. They might have been less, to be honest with you, because it was a dollar store, so who knows? But oh my god! I mean, looking back, they were very clearly Power Ranger knockoff suits. But we would play with them as Power Rangers. Like that was our Power Ranger costumes when we played pretend, because Power Ranger costumes were so expensive and we didn't have a lot of money, you know. So it was perfect for us. But yeah, there was so much of that knockoff stuff that you know, I would play with what I got. If my mom got me dollar store Power Rangers, guess what? That's what I'm going to factor into my next action figure play session, right?
That's what I would do.
That's what you did.
Yeah, and I would get some of the knockoff stuff from the dollar store, make them bad Power Rangers. Or another thing I would do is the other kind of Power Ranger shows that were made by the same company. Superhuman Samurai, VR Troopers. Do you remember those?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Might as well talk about those for a millisecond because we're never going to talk about those again.
So Superhuman Samurai, you had VR Troopers. Do you remember Big Bad Beetleborgs?
Oh my god, I do. And I just saw like their Frankenstein partner guy. I saw a figure of him in a collectibles store. I'm like,
oh, nice.
I'm like, either that is dirt cheap and like $5 or super rare and like flipped it over. Yep, he's super rare. He's like $110. Like,
oh,
no
nice.
Thanks.
So let's try to name some like TV shows that were knockoffs. So we talked about Superhuman Samurai. We had Big Bad Beetleborgs, VR Troopers. Do you remember the Masked Rider?
Yes. So
which was was a Japanese show. It was like Super Kamen Rider, I think, right?
Yes.
In Japan. Yeah.
So season 3 of Power Rangers took a character from Japan, did a kind of a crossover to make him hopefully another superhero in America, but they didn't stick. But the cool thing for me was that these figures, especially the bad guys, were available to purchase, and they were usually on clearance because
they were from shows that nobody really watched as much.
Shows nobody really watched as much after the initial buzz of the show wore off really fast. So I could get, you know, not a random, but you know, the monster of the week, so to speak, from Power Rangers for like $5. Or I can get 2 of these random villains and use my imagination for 2 for $5. I went. Well,
that's the thing too, because whoever made them, I mean, they were the same scale, and because it was all Japanese stuff they made in America, as far as like the properties, like they all looked pretty much like they could cross over with each other pretty easily.
That was the thing. They were made by the same company in Japan. They were the same production company. Saban, who purchased the rights for Power Rangers, purchased the rights for those shows in Japan also and brought them over. So Samurai, VR Troopers, Beetleborgs were all made by the same people in Japan, produced by the same people in America, and Bandai was the same toy company.
Yep.
So all the stars aligned there.
They probably use the same manufacturers for it all. So yeah, it all looked the same. So yeah, why not?
Yes.
Have
so
fun.
My story about the White Ranger, quick, is so like we were talking about the knockoffs. Some were okay looking. Some of them, oh, geez, like this is just, I can't even use my imagination with this. This is terrible.
Right.
I remember being in a Toys R Us with my dad, and this was just still the big era of Power Rangers, and I see this box on the shelf, and I'm like, I've never seen a White Ranger before. The toy was out before he was even on the show.
Oh, nice.
So okay. I didn't know who he was, but I said, Dad, even if he's fake, he looks really cool because it had the White Tiger Zord with it.
Yep.
So I actually had the toy of Tommy, White Ranger, and the Zord before he was even on the show. And then he came out on the show. I go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, things were super hard to find and challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, and of course they're doing a lot. They actually have done some like remakes of the old toy lines. And of course they're way more expensive now than they ever were back then. Even with inflation, I gotta imagine you're seeing $20-$30 per figure for some of these things because of course it's now us with the disposable income that liked them back in the day. We're the ones going to be buying it. But no, man, I mean, there were some good toys for the Power Rangers. And I, again, just like Turtles, have very fond memories of playing with them consistently. So, yeah,
the last toy I ever got from Toys R Us as an adult, because they actually closed them down nationwide. They are opening back up, but I digress. The last toy I ever bought from Toys R Us was, and it's just funny because you started off saying about a black and gold Megazord. They re-released that. I actually got the black and gold Titanus, which is from season 1. That was the last thing I ever bought at Toys R Us until they come back into business in a couple of months, and then that story is null and void.
Yeah, but it's not the same Toys R Us. I think you're okay.
Nah, it's going to be inside of Macy's. It's not going to be the same.
I think you're in the clear. Yeah, you're good. You still have a legacy there. Don't worry.
Good.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, let's wrap this up with talking about the kind of the legacy. I mean, you especially, you know, have remained a fan of Power Rangers pretty consistently through your adulthood, more than me, I think. Again, fond memories from growing up with it, but you know, I know you stuck with it. So as far as the impact goes, you know, this is certainly not as much as, you know, the Turtles and stuff like that. But I'm hoping if my kids get into Power Rangers, because again, it's on Netflix, so if they want to watch it, I'll absolutely watch it with them, and I can tell them all about it. And in fact, there was a video game that came out a few years ago that's kind of a cartoony style, again, a beat 'em up of Power Rangers that my youngest son will play with me, and he has a lot of fun with it. So he sort of understands the Power Rangers, not like he's never seen the show, but I think he would like it. You know, so there's that impact. It's definitely not as strong, but I think overall the impact is that, I mean, it's something that's been going pretty solid for 30 years. There's got to be something special there. And so I mean, again, I know you've been a fan pretty consistently throughout most of it, or if not throughout most of it, you've gone back and rewatched throughout the years as it was, you know, after it was released.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I actually got back into it when I was at your house, when I first visited you in Atlanta for WrestleMania 27. If I say that out loud, it's, what are we up to now? WrestleMania 38. But either way,
it was 11 years ago.
It was a while ago, and I was flipping through Netflix because I didn't have it at the time, and there was a season called Dino Thunder, and Tommy, the original Green Ranger, who stayed on it for a while, was on the show, and I go, wait a minute, because I was out of the loop for 12, 15 years maybe.
Yeah.
And I go, wait a minute, he's still on it? And then I watched an episode, and I go, this is corny, but it's kind of funny in a campy, corny kind of way. And Netflix let me rediscover it. So I like it because it's the kind of nostalgia I like.
Yeah. Do you get that feeling watching the ones that you didn't watch growing up? Do you still have that nostalgic feeling from watching it?
A little bit. You know, they were... The first couple of seasons were all neatly tied together. It was like one long storyline for the first 5 seasons. Then they went and did their own thing every individual season. Then they got sold to Disney. Then they got sold back to Saban. Then they got sold to Nickelodeon. So there was a lot of transition. But every once in a while, they bring out the older Rangers for the reunion shows, usually every 5 years, 25th anniversary, 30th anniversary. So it's a nice nostalgia moments when you see the older guys, older gals coming back. They tie it together. They give you a little bit more character development of like, oh, this guy's married now, he has a kid now, or the bad guy's got kids now. It's like, oh, all right, well, I guess I'm getting old. Like the heroes have kids now. Yeah. So that's cool. You know, they do a lot of crossovers with comic books. The comic books completely redid them. You know, I am a graphic novel fan, so you know, to see the Power Rangers with the Justice League or the Power Rangers with Ninja Turtles, and we couldn't say it in the last episode.
That's right, yeah.
But there was a season where the Power Rangers teamed up with the live-action Ninja Turtles. Terrible episode, but blew my mind as a kid.
And I didn't know it existed until I was older, like an adult, and I went, oh my God, they did a crossover episode, and it was, like you said, it was terrible, but the fact that they did it is kind of cool.
Yes.
And then they did it later on in the comics, which, again, really cool, and they've got a really cool toy line out from that. You actually, the other day, you texted me a picture of one of the Green Ranger and Shredder like mashup figure.
It was
from
cool.
It was amazing. Like, I was so tempted. I didn't buy it, but I was tempted, believe me.
Very surprised you didn't buy it.
Yeah, you know, trust me, it's still on my radar. I think it's in my Amazon wish list now. So if somebody else is thinking of me and they want to buy it for me for a birthday or whatever, it's there. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying people in general. You know,
it's probably gonna be me. So the legacy for me with Power Rangers is something very positive, and it's gonna sound a little silly because I know our culture is changing with. Yep. You know, the way people are portrayed in the best way possible. It is good now. It's better. But when I watched Power Rangers, there was a white guy, there was a black guy, there was an Asian girl, there was a white girl. Tommy is technically, he's Native American. You can't really tell by looking at him, but he is. It was diverse, and it didn't seem forced. It was just everybody was accepted.
And you're right. It was diverse. Yeah.
Season 1, episode 1 was very diverse. And then the movie, implemented even more diversity. I get it. They changed the colors of the Rangers because there were some stereotypes. If you're a Power Ranger fan, you know why the Yellow Ranger...
the new movie, though.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're a Power Ranger fan, you know why the Yellow Ranger was Asian in the original movie. The original show. It was just the way they tied it up, via translation. But it didn't look the best thing to adults. And then Zach, the Black Ranger, was African American. It didn't look good either, but it was diversity. And it was good, and everybody was included. And now they're still doing that. Everybody's included, different races, different nationalities, things of that nature. It's very good. I think that's great for kids to see. Again, Metro New York always was around it. There may have been some folks that weren't around diversity. So I would hope they would see something like that on Power Rangers and think of it and see it as a good thing. So I have nothing but good memories from it. If a kid wanted to watch Power Rangers, I'd be all for it. I think it sends a very good message. Sounds corny. Diversity, teamwork, acceptance, things of that nature. And like Dan said, I still collect things with them. The pricing is through the roof on the old things. But I like the hunt. I like to try to find the new things that they're coming out with. I don't watch the show anymore. I watch it like I watch the WWE. I read about it.
Yeah.
I read about it in terms of, this is the new season. Great. What do the suits look like? What are the names? What does the Megazord look like? That's awesome. I'm more interested in the nostalgic kick of it, of, is there somebody coming back?
Yep.
30th anniversary is coming up next year. Probably going to empty the wallet out. Probably going to watch a couple of episodes, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, again, 30 years later. I don't even want to think about that. Just 30 years later.
That's crazy. 30 years.
It's nuts, man. Oh, wow. Well, listen, dude, this was fun. Again, this was another one where we can really kind of geek out. And this, I'm hoping people listen to this, but again, this is, a pretty specific demographic that's probably going to listen to this one. But it was a lot of fun and very easy to talk about with you. So thank you for coming on for this. And, yeah, man, that's going to wrap up this episode of Generation S. We've got more episodes coming, of course. I've got a lot of topics to cover here. Probably going to start having some more guests on the show for different things. So if you don't hear Lou on an episode, don't freak out. We're still friends.
It's because I didn't buy him the Green Ranger shredder. Just know that.
Yes, if you don't hear from him again on this show, it's because he cheaped out and did not buy me that figure. But no, seriously, this has been a lot of fun with you. You've been, this is episode 5, so I mean, this has been great. I want to obviously keep this going. So if you want to be a guest on this podcast, if you're someone who grew up in the 90s or early 2000s and there's something you're really passionate about, let me know, and be happy to get you on here as a guest. And keep this thing going, because I think this is a very important time in our lives where they're just starting to really go back and wax nostalgia about the time that we grew up in. It's now, I don't know if you call it retro or vintage or whatever, but the stuff we liked is old enough to come back around again. So this is the perfect time to be talking about it, to be rehashing it and remembering those good times, and remembering more than just the flash of the 90s, right? You think of, I remember that I saw this one time as a picture of what 2010 millennials think the 1980s look like, and it was a picture of like neon and polka dots and stripes, and then it was what people who grew up in the 80s actually knew it looked like, and it was just like wood paneling, carpet on the floor, cigarette ashtrays everywhere. And so I want to do that with this podcast too. So we've talked about stuff we grew up with. We've tried to pepper in stories of our childhood and how it kind of relates to whatever we're talking about. And I want to do more of that, because the 90s is going to be remembered, as far as from a commercial perspective and merchandising perspective, as this bright, flashy, cool thing. And there was a lot of that, but there was also a lot of just normal living. And so I want to talk about that too on the show. So there's going to be episodes, in the future where we're not going to talk about a TV franchise or cartoons or whatever. It might be something as simple as, school dances or playing sports in school or, things like that. Where
Video
they're more
stores.
Going to the video store, renting movies. Yep, absolutely. And so it's going to be more down to earth stuff that, again, I'm hoping you can relate to, especially if you're somebody who grew up in this time period. So all that to say, I hope you keep listening to this. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I know you've had a good time with it too, Lou, and we'll definitely get you back on. We'll find some topics where we're gonna have some good conversations again in the future. But now opening it up to some other folks as well. But thank you for being the one to work with me through these first 5 episodes. I've had a lot of fun so far.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I can't wait to do the Pog episode.
The pot, yes. Oh my God, yeah. It's on my list. It's right here. I'm looking at the list. It's number. Now I can do these in any order. Obviously,
Did it make the list?
It made the list.
There we go.
Pog will be a future episode. I promise.
I was joking. I actually had Pogs. I didn't know what they were used
let's
for.
do it. No, let's do it, man. We'll talk about that. All right, man. Well, listen, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Lou, and we'll talk to you next time.
Goodbye.